biggest run yet of Silver Bullet colloidal silver, exclusively available at INFOWARSLife.com. Now, INFOWARSLife.com has taken colloidal silver to the next level using a cutting-edge technique that is free of toxic artificial additives. Now more than ever, it's important to stock up on high-quality Silver Bullet from INFOWARSLife.com and to help others during Christmas by teaching them about the powerful benefits of silver. Secure your Silver Bullet today at INFOWARSLife.com or by calling toll-free 888-253-3139.
Welcome back to the InfoWars Nightly News. I'm your host, Rob Dew, and I'll be conducting the interview portion of today's show. Thank you for David Knight for doing the news. Our next guest is an author and researcher who has basically kept me busy for the last couple weeks reading this amazing book, Hidden History, which kind of goes through every conspiracy from John F. Kennedy all the way up to the Bilderberg Group and what we see today in the modern times. Not the Bilderberg Group back in the 50s, but as researchers and reporters have started covering it. His name is Donald Jeffries, and we actually sell Hidden History here at the InfoWars store. And I definitely want to encourage people to go out there and check out a copy of it. It covers the gambit, and we're going to get into that book, but we're also going to get into some news, especially with this Hillary Clinton, Jeb Bush battle royale that we're going to have to endure for the next 2 or 3 years. I'm really loathing this. But we have now the author of Hidden History. Don, first let me say I think Hidden History is a great book, and I want to get into it. But first, let's talk about some news that's going on, especially this Clinton-Bush dynasty that we're looking at again. But before we get into that, I want to talk about a Breitbart article that just came out, was on the Drudge Report. Amnesty beneficiaries could claim more than $35,000 in tax benefits in the first year. I mean, to you, what is the biggest red flag about this immigration program that is now being implemented under the Obama administration?
Well, they're really just ratcheting up what's been going on now since the 1980s when Reagan's so-called Immigration Reform Act really closed the barn door at that point. And it's just amazing to me. This is an issue probably, I would say, 95% of Americans, if you polled them, would realize it's wrong to be doing this kind of stuff for illegal aliens, or recently, as Alex has been covering, how it's against the law now, basically to arrest them for drunk driving and things like that. I mean, these are senseless things, and who supports them? What is the purpose of them? And it should be something left and right can agree upon, but unfortunately, the left can't go against anything to do with more immigrants because of political correctness, and the right just wants cheap labor. So they come together in a coalition to support this when all it does is drive down wages and really is destroying the working class in this country.
And I've seen articles of state reps and even and congressmen, especially there was one from Oregon who was doing a speech, and he said, if we don't get this amnesty through, this could change the political landscape for the next 20 or 30 years. So they're openly admitting that this is to create a voting bloc to come in and take away people's rights and to take away the guns first, and then they're going to, I think, start promoting this forced vaccine agenda. And it's just whatever the government wants after that, it's going to be carte blanche. What do you say to that?
Exactly. And again, it's something where I don't understand why so many, really this should be an issue the left especially is concerned about, because big labor used to be an essential part of the Democratic Party. And that big labor's all but disappeared as a whether you agree with that or not, as a political force. But, immigration impacts wages, it impacts benefits. It obviously drives everything down for those blue-collar workers that used to have good jobs. And it should be a no-brainer issue for them, but they can't bring it up because of political correctness. The right used to be more effective in combating immigration, but again, they've just sold out to to big business. And okay, whatever increases our profits, we're not looking at the long-term picture and how it affects society.
Yeah, it seems they've pretty much given in with this new DHS funding bill. They're just like, well, our hands are tied. It's either if we don't fund the immigrants, the terrorists are going to win. It seems to be that sort of attitude, that type of mind control and mind game that they're playing against us. Now, what do you think about Jeb Bush coming out and running for? Looks like he's going to run for president. He's automatically the front runner when he comes in, even though we've had 2 Bushes already, and they've pretty much destroyed the country. You've had the first Bush. You could pretty much say he had 3 terms, because you had just the beginning of Reagan's term when he almost took over when Reagan was assassinated. And then if you look at Reagan, he was pretty much the corpse bride, not really doing much, but just kind of nudged along. They bring him out whenever they need him to speak on something. And then you have the Clinton years, and then we're back with Bush the younger, and now we're looking at Bush. I don't know, what are we going to call this guy?
Yeah, just what we need, another Bush. It just amazes me. You know, somehow we can't even accept a third party, let alone a fourth or a fifth, like so many other countries. But you know, here we're going to restrict ourselves to two ruling families. I just can't fathom it. I mean, Bush is going to be the exact same type of Republican that his brother and father were, that Bob Dole was, that John McCainiac was. I mean, you know, he's going to be for war. He's going to be, you know, for more immigration. He's going to be for NAFTA and any other free trade agreement. Just all the disastrous things that have helped destroy the country. And I can't see why the Republican Party would support him, but you know, that's the way they are. They want to be they want to copy. And I read in the article that he was talking about, well, we don't want to be anti-immigration, we want to be anti-this, as if anybody in power in the Republican Party is that way.
Yeah, they've all been bought off, and this is just another signpost that it's not so bad that it's going to be Jeb Bush and then somebody else that we don't know on the Democratic side. It's going to be most likely Hillary Clinton. I mean, you're looking at a Clinton-Bush election once again. And what does that really mean? What does that say to our basic values as a country, our basic understanding of history? Is just, do people not get it? I don't know. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, apparently they don't get it. I really think the last, as we saw, you know, the last president, at any rate, that was actually a man of peace was John F. Kennedy. One of the reasons he was killed. Until, you know, since that time, we've had other Democratic presidents. Bill Clinton certainly has shown a great propensity to bomb other countries, and obviously Barack Obama has as well. And it seems that the Democratic Party is not going to let any kind of a peacenik type candidate in there. Hillary Clinton is certainly going to go for whatever their foreign meddling is. I don't think she's going to turn them down the way JFK did. So you're going to have, again, no choice. Maybe they'll, you know, debate gay marriage or something. That's what basically comes down to. Is that what we're that concerned about? Issues that really don't affect the vast majority of us. Issues
of little or no significance, they turn into this big football issue that people can toss back and forth and bitch about at the water cooler. But, you know, no, they don't talk about the Federal Reserve. They don't talk about endless wars. They don't talk about drones overseeing us. They do talk about wanting to force vaccinate us. That seems to be big on the agendas now on both sides. Both sides are both coming out. That's how you know it's evil, when both sides are for it. And they're coming out saying, hey, we got to take away parental choice. We got to take away informed consent. If the drug companies come up with a drug and it goes through our loophole FDA process that really doesn't even offer much oversight to these drug companies, we're just going to rubber stamp it and force it down into your body.
Exactly. I think you can safely rest assured that both Hillary and Jeb Bush will be for vaccinations. I don't think they're going to be coming out against vaccinations.
And looking at corruption, the Clinton Foundation accepted millions of dollars from 7 foreign governments during Hillary's tenure as Secretary of State, including one donation that violated the ethics agreement with the Obama administration. I mean, these people just have no cause whatsoever to be leaders anywhere. And that's what I really like about your book, Hidden History. I actually started in the middle. If you go to the table of contents, I believe I started on chapter 6, which is the Clinton years. Because when I grew up, I was kind of aware of what was going on. There was a big Speaker of the House battle with Newt Gingrich and the Project for a New American, or the Contract with America. But I didn't really pay much attention to this stuff because I had already seen the left-right paradigm. I was already aware of that. But going into this, the Clinton years, so many deaths that have occurred under the Clinton administration, which I think we're going to see more of with Hillary when she gets in. John F. Kennedy Jr. going into 9/11. Your book really lays out in an easy-to-read, factual form the last, you go back all the way to John F. Kennedy, but just looking at the Clinton years and Bush, just the last 40 years of what's been going on in our world, you really lay it out in an easy-to-read fashion. You're naming names. You're not pulling punches. And it's a really hard-hitting book. And it's quick. I got through chapter 6 to chapter 17 in about 4 days because it was so enthralling. I'm just like, I can't believe all this information that I had lost through the years. And it's just a great way to really, just get a gestalt of what's been going on in our world.
Well, thank you for the kind words. Hopefully what I tried to do in the book is to show how there's been, basically an uninterrupted timeline. It doesn't matter who's in office because these presidents and senatorial leaders, House leaders are basically puppets. Someone's pulling their strings, but the policies never change. If there's a big free trade agreement, it's going to go through. If there's a global meddling to be done in some country where we're going to, go over and try to impose our will on them, it's going to go through. It just happens. It's inevitable. that no one in a position of power opposes it. And the body count, as you mentioned, Clinton body count was probably more famous than some of the others, but both Bushes had a body count, Reagan had a body count, LBJ certainly had a body count, and Obama has a body count. And it's just these unnatural deaths seem to follow these leaders. And people don't normally fall off of high buildings or die in plane crashes or die in train wrecks. Most people die from cancer or heart attacks. But if you're associated with these powerful figures, you tend to die unnaturally. And that ought to open people's eyes, but somehow it doesn't seem to. I don't know how much coincidence they can accept.
The press is totally bought off in this. Nobody really wanted to investigate Gary Webb. I think a lot of the press was happy when he supposedly committed suicide by shooting himself twice, and they would gladly go along with that fable that, oh yeah, it's totally possible to shoot yourself twice in the head. When I don't know when that's ever happened, unless it's been a homicide. And now you see it down in Argentina. The Argentinian president is trying to back away from the prosecutor who just ends up dead right before he's about to go testify. But it just shows that governments are corrupt, and absolute governments are absolutely corrupt. And I'm in the JFK portion of your book right now, chapter 1 and chapter 2, and just take people back. This was all kind of set up with the Kennedy assassination. This mindset that we're in now, where they bring together a group of politicians to investigate themselves. No wrongdoing is ever found. No one's ever held accountable. And in any of these, there's the Secret Service. Nobody got fired after John F. Kennedy was assassinated. After 9/11, nobody gets fired. People get promotions. We just see it time and time again. Anytime the government messes up, well, they didn't know. It's okay. It's not their fault. But anytime we mess up, it's jail time. It's fines. It's court costs. It's death. It could even be death. You could be killed by, black ski mask soldiers coming in on a drug raid for drugs that they bring into this country.
Absolutely. The assassination of President Kennedy is all important. It was a seminal event of my generation. I don't think it's hackneyed to say that it was it's cliche to say that it was the beginning of the loss of innocence, that the 60s really began with the assassination of JFK. The Eisenhower years almost ended at that point, the innocence. And the fact that it was never investigated, that's what people don't seem to understand, is that the crime was never investigated. The Warren Commission never set out to, they didn't even have, they divided into subgroups, and none of the groups, as Mark Lane said originally on, was you ought to add a group here, who killed JFK. It was all about a biography of Oswald, a prosecutorial brief against Oswald, but they never attempted to follow any leads. And, since that time, and no journalist at the time, nobody from the New York Times, the Washington Post, any of the television networks, they all followed right along. They never did any investigative reporting, and they still haven't. The only reason we know anything about the flaws in the official case is because citizen activists like Mark Lane and Harold Weisberg and Sylvia Meagher and so many others came out and did all the work on their own. They didn't have subpoena power. They didn't, they couldn't, most of them weren't lawyers, but they were able to expose the flaws in the case and make the overwhelming majority of people realize how absurd the lone assassin fairy tale was.
Yeah, and that got so much press. It was one guy, we've got him, oh, now he's dead. Even though he came out and said he was a patsy. That just seemed to get washed under the rug. And a lot of this information never even came out until the 70s when you had Jim Garrison and his court cases. But looking at the 70s, you got Watergate, Congress looking at the CIA, nothing really happened. They did an investigation. Maybe some things got out, like the heart attack gun. Oh, we'll give them a couple little secrets. But, what do you think the CIA is up to now in this day and age? I mean, how far have they come since they were created? I mean, since JFK threatened to destroy them back then. And now, what is the CIA morphed into now?
Well, it's hard to figure out sometimes where the CIA begins and the NSA ends, the Mafia, the DIA. I mean, these are all separate entities. And as you mentioned, it looked like at that time in the mid-'70s, the public was on board, but they were outraged. Like one example I like to give of how far we've sunk morally is in 1976, President Ford signed an executive order, of all people, a member of the Warren Commission, signed an executive order under pressure from Congress, a leftist Congress, to ban assassination by American, as a tool. And we recognized at the time, polls showed that most Americans would have opposed assassinating Hitler. That's the way we felt about assassination as morally at that point. Fast forward less than 40 years later, Barack Obama assassinates Anwar al-Awlaki, an American citizen, and the next month assassinates his 16-year-old son with drones. and brags about it. At least bragged about Anwar al-Awlaki, and spikes the football.